these companies that are buying Amazon or buying e-commerce brands, right, and rolling them up and trying to grow them, they all just, they're all hungry for the right business to buy it. So, there's a very real massive opportunity now that if you do find a niche, if you do find the product, if you do great with your business, if you put in place the right processes, you can exit in, literally you can exit in 1 to 2 years and walk out with $1 million, $2 million or whatever it is, right?
Welcome to the e-commerce podcast with me, your host, Matt Edmondson. The e-commerce podcast is all about helping you deliver e-commerce wow. And to help us do just that, today I am chatting with John Tilley from ZonGuru. That's right, John is back. For those of you who are regular to the shows, you will know this is not John's first outing on the e-commerce podcast. And we are going to be talking about what Amazon is doing and what do Amazon sellers now need to know. But before we jump into the conversation, let me suggest a few episodes that I think you'll enjoy listening to. If you haven't done so already, check out the very first conversation that John and I had. Is Amazon right for your digital business? This was back in the day when John didn't have kids and the world was just sort of warming up to COVID. And the other episode to check out, Grow Your E-Commerce Business by Stealing These 7 Secrets from the Military with Stuart Leo. Still one of my favorite podcast titles ever. Now, you can find these and their entire archive of episodes on our website for free. ecommercepodcast.net is the website. And whilst you're there, you can also sign up for our newsletter. And each week we will email you the links and the notes from the conversations with our guests. They go direct to your inbox, totally free. So make sure you sign up for that. There's no nasties with it. Now, this episode is brought to you by the e-commerce cohort, which helps you deliver e-commerce wow to your customers. The e-commerce cohort is basically a monthly mastermind group where there's coaching, there's workshops, there's all kinds of good stuff, all designed to help you grow in your understanding and learning of e-commerce. Yes, it is. And it's there and it works really, really well. It's pretty lightweight, so it's not overwhelming, but you get some great stuff out of it. You meet some great people and you get to work on your e-commerce business. So if that sounds of interest to you, check out ecommercecohort.com. Or if you've got any questions, email me, matt@ecommercepodcast.net, and I'll try and answer them. Now, let's get into the conversation with John. John is a successful entrepreneur and Amazon thought leader. After 15 years working as an account director and strategist for some of the top global digital agencies, John started his Amazon journey back in 2014, launching multiple successful private label brands, and soon after launching ZonGuru, an all-in-one software toolset for Amazon private label sellers. Yes, check it out. ZonGuru continues to launch tools ahead of the market and use data-driven techniques to help its customers create and run successful private label businesses on Amazon. He has got a lot of data. He's got a lot of insight. He knows a lot of stuff about Amazon. So John, welcome back to the e-commerce podcast. I was going to say welcome back to the e-commerce cohort. No, this is the podcast. It's great to have you, man. How you doing?
What's up, Matt? Good to see you and good to hear your voice. Since we last talked, I think there's been quite an evolution in the world. I like your line there that the world was warming up to COVID back when we first and good to hear your voice, man. Firstly, a note just from me that I can hear the evolution in your voice and the way you narrate. It's stepped up a couple of levels as well. It was great before, but now it's excellent. So
bless you. You're a smooth talker. It's what happens when you do something over and over again. You either get better at it or you get flippant with it, don't you, really? It's one of those kind of things. But speaking of getting better, ZonGuru, you were telling me before we hit the record button that you guys got some funding last year, right?
Yeah, we raised VC funding last year. I think it was May last year. I think I got the check, and an hour later, my wife told me she was pregnant with our second kid. Man, I was like, oh shit, what's gonna happen? What's the third thing gonna happen today? I don't know.
Man, that must have been one hell of a day.
Oh, what was the day? Yeah, I think it was May 14th. I think if I remember correctly. But yeah, it's we had been bootstrapped all the way through then. But I think in our space specifically, I think we're competing with big companies with 300 million in funding and stuff like that. So we didn't raise that much, but it was a decision that I think it was necessary in the marketplace, and getting a little bit more fuel to add to the fire was a good thing. So we did that, and you hear horror stories of raising funds with VCs and what that does to your business and just your enjoyment of it, right? And I'm really happy with our guys. I think they've added funds, but also strategic chops and operational chops as well. So yeah, it's been a good journey and a pleasant one, which I'm happy to report.
Well, you've kind of preempted my question, really, because that's always a big thing, isn't it? Yeah, I've got this VC funding, but I've lost my ability to breathe as a result, and it's that kind of. But it seems to have worked well for you, or is working well for you guys, which is lovely to hear. So, what are some of the changes then that have happened for ZonGuru since you've got the VC funding?
Yeah, actually, one note I would say on VC funding, just some of my, we interviewed a bunch of different VCs, and I think, if you are a business owner and you're looking for that, think about where you are in your business. But there's a lot of VC funds out there, and they have huge funds with many companies that are part of that, and then you just become a number, right? And
yeah.
They push you hard. You're either successful or whatever. But whereas what I actually chose a relatively new fund. And when it's a relatively new fund, they're on their second fund. They're just about to raise their third. There's a lot more care and I mean, I think these guys care generally anyway, and they have a passion for entrepreneurs. But there's they also want we have to be successful, right? So there's a lot more focus around that and good focus. So if you are evaluating your VCs, think a lot about the culture and where are they at in their journey, because that's going to have a big impact on you as a business owner, right? So so we raised the funds, and what's happened with ZonGuru, I think there's two things, and we could talk about the second and the first in a little bit, but there's been an evolution of Amazon, right? And so part of ZonGuru's focus has been an evolution of our product to cater to some of the new rising targets or customers within that profile, and one of them has been the enterprise brands, as well as the new emerging kind of service of expert Amazon agencies, right? Operational agencies that run brands for their clients. And so we tested that as a kind of ICP, ideal customer profile, and we have an amazing fit. ZonGuru is not the biggest or the most well known in the space, but when you truly speak to experts, and true experts who understand the business, and they look at our software, and they understand that they have to do things efficiently, they have to raise the quality of their brand managers, and they have to do it at scale. The light bulb goes off for them when they see ZonGuru, and they're like, this is the best product in the market. So it's really cool. The previous model when we talked or was focused on the small private label seller, and then we did a lot of inbound marketing, just to like, hey, he has PPC or something, he has a lead magnet, check us out, and then it's a self-fulfilled conversion, right? They just get in and they convert and they do their free trial, and they get to play around with the tools. Now with this latest model, we do a lot of more outbound. We have a sales team. We have demos. We sit down for an hour. We spend that time with the brand manager or the CEO. And when you have that time to sit down with someone and show them around, they're like, they really get the value of what we're doing. So it's quite pleasing as well, to sit down with these people and see their response to our product, and it's pretty motivating. So, that said, we haven't obviously forgotten at all about our private label, smaller SMB businesses. They're still a massive part of our audience. We still cater to them and focus on them from marketing and a customer success perspective. But we have this new kind of cohort that we're looking at, and it's a trickle down effect. So whatever we solve them for at the agency enterprise level, all of the SMB smaller businesses benefit because they're doing the same things. It's just potentially a little bit more at scale at the other level. So it's been a really interesting journey, and certainly kind of a cool benefit of that as well is just our CS team having more complex conversations, answering more complex questions, more enterprise level questions. So it's quite, kind of job satisfaction is interesting as well, right? Because they're not just super kind of entry level conversations. They're more complex. So it's good all around. Yeah.
Oh, it sounds like a hell of a journey, really, and I'm stoked for you, man, that it's going well. And one of the things that you said was, obviously, some of the evolution of Amazon. Therefore, you've had to change your product, and you talked about enterprise. You talked about agencies, the growth of agencies, which is fascinating to me as well. But before we get into those, is there still opportunities for people who are small SMBs? They live, they've got a job, they're wanting to set up a side hustle or something like that, to sort of get started with Amazon, to create a business for themselves, and hopefully that becomes their full-time income. Are there still those opportunities, or are they sort of all but gone now?
The short answer is yes. There's still amazing opportunities on Amazon, Amazon.com, and more importantly, I think out of the pandemic, e-commerce has just obviously boomed. So some of those traditional retail markets, Amazon Australia, which was very, very retail, and Amazon launched there. Amazon, UK has been going for great, gangbusters for a while, but some Amazon Germany has grown. Some of the like Amazon Italy and France, like really traditional retail, heavy markets. They all those brands and everything and all the customers have moved online, right, onto Amazon, and so those markets are really viable right now, and pretty awesome. It's kind of sad in some ways because when you walk around the US, sometimes the retail experience is really crap, right? Going to little boutique stores and all that kind of stuff, and I hope that hasn't happened in Europe too much. But so there's global opportunities for sure, and certainly I would say if there's an SMB smaller seller looking to launch, they can look at some of those international markets first, and if they do well there, then come to the US, because that kind of traction that you get on some of those markets will help you to not just come in as a brand new product onto Amazon for the algorithm, right? So that's kind of a backdoor way of getting into the US market, is grow your business first on some of the other emerging markets. So there's certainly amazing opportunities, especially Amazon Australia. That's one that I've looked at quite closely, and you can launch some of those big ticket items that you could launch back in. It's almost like launching on Amazon back in 2016, right? And if you see the growth of what's going to happen on Amazon Australia, and you just stay in stock, in 3, 4, 5 years, you're getting at like 30x on your business or whatever, right? So there's huge opportunities there. And then I would say on Amazon.com, yes, there's absolutely there's opportunities, but it's finding that niche within a niche. It's using data to find those products, and it's having a much more sophisticated launch strategy, and actually beyond launch, it's about kind of proper business cycle management, not going out of stock. How do you grow your business and stay aligned with the algorithm after launch, right? Because it's once you fall out of alignment with the algorithm, it's much harder to come back, because they'll just move to the next product and the next product, right? So in a nutshell, I would say you have to be a much more dialed in e-commerce entrepreneur, understanding all the different strategies,
Yeah.
understanding how to use data, have all the right processes in place, and do well. It's not just like, oh, we'll throw this up and see what happens.
Yeah.
You probably have to have significant capital, 20 to 50 grand at the low end, right, to kind of launch your product. And those niches are there. You just have to dial them in. So we see from our customers people launching products all the time and some amazing results. And we also see plenty guys launching and completely failing, right, because they're not doing it right or haven't found the right thing. So they're all there, but it's just about being more dialed in, using data. And the good news is there's a lot more data now available, and hopefully software companies out there that can use the data to kind of paint a visual picture and answer the right questions, right? So that's all good, but and also understanding that the markets that you might compete in, for sure there's enterprise brands, there's retail brands that are on there, if you choose wrong, you can get into a massive PPC sponsored ad war on Amazon, and you can lose that very quickly with some of the deep pockets that some of these bigger brands have, right?
Yeah, totally. So there are opportunities just there. You need a little bit more about you. It's not just a case of throw it on and it'll be fine. You've got to plan and think it through, regardless of what the Instagram ads tell you.
100%. And by the way, there's hundreds of aggregators now. These companies that are buying Amazon or buying e-commerce brands, right, and rolling them up and trying to grow them. They all just they're all hungry for the right business to buy it. So there's a very real massive opportunity now that if you do find a niche, if you do find the product, if you do great with your business, if you put in place the right processes, you can exit in literally you can exit in 1 to 2 years and walk out with $1 million, $2 million or whatever it is, right? And that's an insane opportunity that's available to literally everyone, right? So you've got to do it right. But if you sit down today and you're like, hey, if you work hard on this, do it right, you can exit in 2 years for $2 million.
Yeah,
how cool is that?
Right. Yeah, totally. So what have you got any examples of people that have done well starting recently? What sort of niches they find? Not that we can copy, because obviously they have them. I'm just kind of curious, maybe some of the things that have surprised you, perhaps.
I think in the US, one of the surprising growth markets that we've seen recently is around hop water. I don't know if that's big in the UK yet, but that's hop water, HOP water. So essentially what it is in Europe, we've seen a massive growth in the 0% beer market, right? And some crazy cat, a small private label seller here, came to the US and was like, okay, well, that's growing there, but how can we remove all the carbs? And basically they came up with they started with it's almost like a sparkling tea that had a hoppy taste. And they kind of evolved that and worked on getting it to taste pretty similar to beer, but it's just sparkling water that tastes similar to beer with no carbs, no anything, right? And that's a hugely growing, the sparkling water segment has been growing for a while, but that kind of hop water niche has just blown up here. And that was a small brand that started and did insanely well. So they've done well. There's I'm trying to remember the name of it. There's another sparkling water, which is a massive marketing. I think it's called Death Water or that's Sparkling of Death or something like that. But they've done incredibly well just on Amazon, and they started there and gone on. So I mean, and that brand's worth like 100 million now or something. So it's huge. If you find the niche and those are some of the interesting niches. I would say. If you are looking, as an individual, trying to find those unsexy niches, unsexy products, some of those medical products that are, that need a little bit of sexing up, that's still a really interesting niche. We see a lot of cool product evolution in that space where it's still a big demand, but people haven't really jumped onto that and done a great job, right? So, that's pretty interesting, I think. So there's plenty out there, and certainly I think as an e-commerce seller, if you can get access to some of the reports on Amazon.com in the subcategories, and understanding what's actually growing, what are the trends in those. That's a future insight into potentially what's going to grow in some of the European markets, right? So if you want,
that was going to be my next question, actually. Cool. Yeah. Can you? I mean, I assume your platform does this, where you can go get the insights of what's selling in the States, and then kind of go, well, actually, I'm now going to try this over on Amazon Australia because I can figure out how to get the product to the Aussies and get it distributed there. So. It's not a guaranteed method by any stretch of the imagination, but it seems to be a sensible approach, I would have thought.
Yes. And we have a report called the Global Niche Analysis Report, right? So we look at a niche you can basically pick the markets that you want to look at. And we kind of look at a whole bunch of visualization around data to assess a niche. And so you can see, what is the TAM, of a niche, total applicable market size, and revenue size of a market in the US, a niche in the US. I'm sorry. You can kind of see the market share of the main players, what kind of revenue they're doing, and then you can compare that to a market, in the UK and see, hey, has that grown? If it's a 10 million TAM in the US, is it a 2 million TAM in the UK? And how much of that market share is owned by the top brands, and is there an opportunity, right? So we do that for that. We can do it for Australia. So it is the ability to kind of look at, hey, what's happening in the US, and then look at the other markets. But what I would say as well is it's kind of interesting to do the reverse, right? Which is to look at some of the hot very competitive markets in the US, and seeing the growth of some of those over time, like pet category products or sporting equipment or whatever, and saying like that to launch a product in that market, and what's an example I can give you? It could be like I don't know, just make it like a putting green, like a golf putting green, right? That could be a product that could do you on the US. It could probably do you like $1 million in revenue a month, right? And it could cost you $100,000 to get into. Whereas in 2016, you could get into that market for $50,000, and it was probably doing you $100,000 a month, right? And so seeing some of those really competitive, evolved markets in the US, and then going and looking at something like Amazon Australia and being like, wow, I can, this product's going to make me $1 million a month in the US, but it's going to make me, 20, 30,000 in Australia. But understanding that in 3-4 years, what is the size of that market going to be? It's pretty insane. So there's a little bit of patience there, but it's like it's basically just repeating what's already been successful in the market. So you kind of have that hindsight to go into some of these markets, right? So so it's about looking at emerging trends and potentially looking at bringing that to some of the international markets, and kind of doing the opposite, which is looking at saturated markets and then saying, hey, is there an opportunity on there? So you can kind of look from both ends, right?
Yeah, really clever. Really clever. Very good. So let's talk about enterprise then. So you mentioned that one of the evolutions that you see with Amazon is enterprise brands. Just explain what you mean by that.
Yeah. So, I think we knew this was going to happen anyway, right? The e-commerce trends is basically, big retail brands, bigger traditional retail companies would evolve and start putting their products onto e-commerce platforms. And that was obviously totally happening before the pandemic, but the pandemic has just accelerated that, right?
Totally.
There's, you can pretty much speak to most brands now, and they're going to have an Amazon focused division of their business, right? Taking their products, pushing it out there. And obviously, all the other e-commerce channels as well, right? So omni-channel, e-commerce strategies are important for any traditional retail brand, right? So what I mean by that is there's now companies, that's traditional retail companies that have big pockets, big brands that are pushing them out on the e-commerce channels. Now, previously you would have like Amazon resellers. So guys would go into retail stores, wholesale, buy a bunch of stuff, and flip it on Amazon. So you had these like smaller private label or we call them resellers, right? Flipping products on the e-commerce channels, and now those have been taken over by the primary brand owner, right? And they're doing it, and that's evolved in conjunction with what we've been like, geez, Amazon, you're so far behind Google, and understanding that you have a platform that you can make so much money off of sponsored ads. And they're so far behind the ball, but it's almost like, during the pandemic, the light went off for Amazon. They're like, we can make money off pay. So now like you have like a whole bunch of different paid sponsored ad opportunities that you can do, and it's pay to play, right? So they're dialing it up, and I think it's the second biggest revenue channel now is the sponsored ad side. So there's many opportunities there. You have to kind of pay to play. It's what goes with the algorithm. So, if you're in a market and you have big brands there with deep pockets, it's challenging, right? So, that's challenging. Amazon is favoring brands. The good news is they also like to see that you're bringing in outside traffic. So if you are a smaller player, I think having some creative strategies around bringing traffic from other platforms, Shopify, Google, wherever it is, and driving it to your storefront, that helps as well. So it's not just all PPC focused, but that's brands in a nutshell. So there's enterprise brands, and then of course, in addition to that, the evolution of the specialist operational agency that run those brands.
You mentioned that, and that's something that I've noticed actually. I mean, we've had a few of the guys on the podcast, the sort of agencies on. I'm thinking Andrew Morgan's. I'm thinking from Marknology. There's been quite a few. If you just go to the website and type Amazon, some of the guys have come on. They're all really interesting. Ryan Flanagan, he was on recently as well, and another guy that's sort of set up his agency, and it was interesting. Ryan's story, he's sort of gone from sort of busting out in his initial business, and he sort of stumbles into Amazon, and he helps a solar guy selling solar make crazy amounts of money all rapidly, and boom, an Amazon agency is born. They figured it out, because obviously Amazon, I think it's one of the things which is changing the most, isn't it? Amazon at the moment, in terms of they figured out we can make some real money here, and they seem. And the agencies that are keeping up with all the changes seem to be the ones doing the sort of the best out of the whole thing. I imagine actually from your point of view, it's a bit of a nightmare from a software side of things. All these changes and evolutions trying to play keep up, is it not?
Not so much. I think there's obviously different agencies at different levels, right? And I think it's about finding the right fit for us at the agency level, and we talk about ICPs, ideal customer profile. And for us, an agency that is managing less than 10 clients usually isn't a really good fit for us, because, they're happy to pay, $100 a month for one, operational software, and the whole team kind of logs in there, and they just, they're running that with 1,000 Google Sheets, right? And that's how they operate in the Amazon business. It's typically beyond 20 clients that we truly start to have a fit, and there's a more sophisticated business owner there who has a smaller team. They might have some vertical depth, where they have some brand managers. They have 2 or 3 brand managers, and they're looking for good software that can help them be more efficient, that can lift the quality level of their brand managers and can scale. So those are kind of the levers that we've been the needs that we've been looking at in depth and solving, right? So that's a better fit for us, and the good part of that is that they're obviously willing to pay more for software, and there's less churn, and kind of what we're doing at the software level, right? Which is always trying to aim for higher ARPU, less churn. ARPU is average revenue per user, right? So that's an interesting space for us. And there's definitely it's a very, for such a big industry, this Amazon e-commerce business, it's so new in its evolution, right? And so you do have as a profile of some of these agencies, a guy who was selling on Amazon in 2014. He exited, an aggregator, bought his business for a few million. And he was like, well, what am I doing now? Well, I know Amazon, so let me start an agency. And they're kind of doing that, and they're like maybe 4 or 5 people, and they're using all their skills that they've learned on that to, from VAs and all that kind of stuff to run their business, right? So that's one market, and some of those are know what they're doing and some don't. There's some of these aggregators, who are kind of like an agency. They own the brands, but they're kind of running, trying to scale these businesses as basically an operational business, who've got a lot of funding, and a lot of them don't know what the hell they're doing, and some of them know what they're doing, right? So they're all interested in kind of figuring things out, and connecting with us, and seeing how they can do things at scale. And on just kind of a side note on aggregators, a lot of them are like, hey, we've got all this money, we just want to build all the software ourselves, right? And so it was kind of hard to see them using our software, but that's evolved because of a little bit of this economic crisis that we're going through right now, and the debt financing. They're realizing like, hey, we need to focus in certain areas, and let's get people to know what they're actually doing, and they're starting to use our software and all that kind of stuff. So there's the aggregators, and then kind of my favorite, which goes back to some of my background, which is the traditional, we call it traditional now, but traditional digital agencies. They all, it's an additional revenue stream for them now, right? So they've got retail brands that they've been helping at the digital level, creative advertising, some of the bigger blue chip agencies, but they all need an Amazon division now within their business, right? So educating them, getting them up to speed, if they've got a traditional retail brand that they are pushing on their own digital website, and they're like, hey, well, we're launching on Amazon, who's going to handle that for us? I mean, the smart agencies are going to start building their internal Amazon specialist division, and be an agency there, right? So that's really, really new, if not hasn't even hit yet. But I think that's going to be a little bit of the competition for those current specialist agencies. Is like
Yeah. It's a really interesting point, because actually one of my questions to you was, as you were talking, I was thinking, well, there's a lot of, let's say there's a Shopify agency out there, and they do Shopify really well. Is there an opportunity for them to go, actually, let's build this Amazon sort of side to our business where we become a specialist Amazon agency? And I know there's a lot of agencies that listen to the podcast, and a lot of them are going to be going, is there an opportunity for us here that we should think about looking at? And if so, how the hell do we start, right? Because that's always been it's like, where do you begin? How do you even think about learning something to even get competent at something, to even think about selling that to a customer?
Great segue, Matt. Well, we have a ZonGuru accreditation course for agencies that they can jump on.
I should set myself up as an affiliate now. So is that what you're doing? I'm joking aside, an interesting segue. So you've actually looked at this and gone, yes, there's opportunities. Let's help these guys.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think the answer to your first question for the Shopify agency is yes. Again, you've got to decide as a business, hey, there's an opportunity there, but what is it going to do to my overall business? Is it going to take away from my specialization on Shopify? So you've got to do it at the right time for your business, and that's obviously, kind of business 101. But yes, for sure, there's opportunity, and the conversation nowadays is more omni-channel, right? And even the agencies I talk to these days, it's like, a lot of their brands aren't just specialists on Amazon. They are definitely omni-channel. They have the other channels. So if you can satisfy that, just with your own business, yes, it's there. And we've seen that, and certainly in our conversations, we've seen that there's a need. If it's not one brand manager, it might be a few of the other brand managers that need to be skilled up, right? And they have to be better at their skills. So we just created an accreditation course, which is really an operational course about how do you actually run the Amazon business. But it's done at more scale. So some of the questions in there are more of like how do you do this for your client? What are the important things for your clients? What are the kind of metrics you have to be looking at, etc. So, it's going well. I think in that place. I think ideally for me, down the road, it's going to be about if I had to land an ideal client, it would be like a Publicis or an Omnicom. Like these agency aggregators where the switch has gone off there, and they're like, okay, we have a group of agencies, digital agencies that need to be skilled up. Let's get some software out there and let's get a course going. So, if any of those guys are listening to your podcast, hit me up, because I'd be happy to help you guys.
Yeah. No, I'm sure. But I'm thinking, like, I know a lot of agencies that specialize or have specialized over the years in traditional e-commerce, i.e., say a Shopify site, or they do the bespoke e-commerce sites, but it's their own site. And people have been a little bit reticent to get involved in the Amazon space. It's felt a bit like a vortex in some respects, a bit like a black hole. So you've now got this accreditation course. If I'm an agency and I'm a small agency, maybe 5 to 10 people, and I'm thinking, is this something that I should look at? Realistically, what kind of resource would I have to be thinking about? Is it going to be a person full-time for 6 months to get up to speed? I appreciate this is how long is a piece of string kind of a question, John. Mm-hmm. I'm just thinking from a digital agency's point of view, they're going to be thinking, well, what sort of investment, for want of a better expression, do I need to make? What sort of time commitment, what sort of people do we need?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And I would say, certainly internally you would have to, there's different areas of an Amazon business, right? And some of it is kind of the SEOing of your content for the listing, right? And managing that piece, which I think is an important specialist agency role, like which is listing management. That kind of like SEO piece. How do we get up our listing in front of customers and optimize that, right? So that's one piece of the business. There's certainly an inventory management piece, which is like from your clients' stock. How do we get product into Amazon and stay in stock, and the management of that piece, which some of the agencies take on as well. And there's for sure the sponsored brand management piece, right? The PPC piece, which is agencies just do that as a specialization, which is critical. Which is like, how do we manage all of that, and also the profits and the spend that you what we call ACOS, advertising cost of sales, right? Which is how do we manage that spend to maximize profits? That's a piece of the business. And then and then certainly I think there's the advertising piece outside of Amazon and driving traffic to Amazon. So there's different specialist areas within that, right? And so obviously as an agency you've got to figure out, hey, do I want to do one piece or all of that? And then I would probably start with one based on the clients that you have. What is the needs that they need fulfilled most on Amazon, and then hiring for that internally, and then there's definitely services that can also you can have overflow services that you can get access. For example, with ZonGuru, we have an overflow service on the listing optimization side, which is only for enterprise brands or agencies, which is like the challenge of agencies bringing on a client and they're like, great, let's do our Amazon business. We've got 100 listings to do. And they're like, well, we haven't got staff for that. So we have an overflow service where we have listing creation services that agencies can use as overflow. They use the guys, they obviously do the listings and they just make a markup on that and or a charge cost to their clients. And so there's ways, I think, you could probably hire one specialist in an area and you could definitely outsource some of that legwork to various services around that, right? So it's like anything. I don't think you have to totally hire up everyone to start. I think there's ways around that, but you definitely have to have a specialist within your agency, right?
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And so your accreditation course, is that kind of like an overview of those 4 areas that you talked about, or is it focused in on just one of those specific areas?
Yeah, the accreditation course is more around like leveling up the the brand manager to give them a good overview of like, hey, here's all the parts of an Amazon business or a services side of the agency and what you need to manage, so they can speak, from a skilled and expert level across that business and understand what are the things that move it, that move the needle. So it's analytics and understanding the Amazon algorithm and everything that goes around that. And then we focus a lot on the operational side of listing management, business analytics, review automation, kind of like the main key parts of the business. And on the PPC side, it's more about the reporting and how to do that. It's not a specialist PPC course, which is, we will probably do that course at some point, but we don't have that as yet. So it's more the operational side of, the overview of the business.
Yeah, but like you say, you can outsource the PPC at the moment, and probably not a bad thing to do when you're starting out anyway. Well, John, listen, great conversation, and I'm really fascinated with where Amazon's going. I'm really intrigued with this idea of agencies. More agencies starting to bring in Amazon specialists. I think you're right, and I think the accreditation course is a bloody clever idea, because I can see the growth in that just from what I know about agency, really. And also, in some respects, from, say, businesses like mine, an traditional e-commerce business that has done great. We work with an Amazon agency, and I'm thinking to myself, well, actually, I could get one of our team members on your accreditation course, and actually, do we start to bring some of that in-house? I don't know, and I can see a lot of brands starting to think that now, and bring those kind of things in-house. So, John, my final question for you, right? It's completely left field, so I just want to point that out, right? So this show is sponsored, as you know, by the e-commerce cohort, which is all about using coaching and peer mentoring to deliver e-commerce well. So I want you to imagine, John, right? You're stood in a room full of cohort members. This could be virtual, I suppose, a virtual room. And you've just delivered your keynote speech about what Amazon is doing and what Amazon sellers need to know, a whole bunch of the stuff you've just talked about, and you've gone into it. And the crowd is going wild. They're like, yeah, John, go. Dude, best talk I've ever heard. And so when it all dies down, you get a minute to thank all of those folks that have had a big impact on your life, whether family, mentors, authors, software, podcasts, whatever it is. Who do you thank and why?
I'd like to thank myself. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I've seen that. Who was it that did that? Anyway, I digress. Sorry, yeah, carry on.
Well, I mean, I definitely have to thank my two business partners. Adam Hudson, who's based in Australia, who started ZonGuru with me. He focused on another part of the business, and I ran the software, but we kind of created the vision together, and he's been a huge impact on me as someone who's a serial entrepreneur and just done incredible work around successful businesses for the last 20 years. So he's obviously hugely influential. For sure, my operational CTO partner, who's based in Bulgaria, from Canada originally, Stefan. He's just a genius when it comes to software, and more importantly, that piece that we look for in that we need to solve on the software side, which is finding a team that can develop tech but can truly understand the business vision and the business strategy and objectives, right? And marrying those two, because that's how you create scalable tech. And he's done an amazing job there. So that's on the business side for sure. I think that's who I would immediately thank, right? And
fantastic.
Look, I mean, it's a wild journey, and I think it's a challenging journey. I think just in our space, but the good thing is that there's a huge evolution that's happening with Amazon, and certainly there's a lot more data and interesting questions to answer with data that Amazon is just not doing a good job of. So there's always going to be a need for software, and it's about how we can deliver on that. So exciting times ahead for sure.
Fantastic. John, how do people reach you? How do they connect with you if they want to find out more about ZonGuru, the accreditation course, or just reach out and say, how's it? What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, I think go to zonguru.com and we have a chat support there and a team eager to answer your questions. So certainly that's a place. LinkedIn, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so you can grab me there. And I don't know if in the show notes I could give you a couple of links to some of those ways of agencies connecting with us. And they can connect with us directly, or even some of those reports that I talked of. We have some of those free reports that we can give you, where you can kind of look at a subcategory and understand the kind of data we look at. So happy to give you links if you need to. Otherwise, ZonGuru.com or my LinkedIn profile, they can get me there.
Oh, fantastic. No, that'd be great. And whatever links you give us, we will, of course, put in the show notes. Now, John, big thanks, man. Thanks so much for joining us here on the podcast. As always, been a thoroughly enjoyable and informative conversation. You're a legend, man. Appreciate you being on.
Thank you so much, Matt. That was awesome. And as always, you stay present and you know what questions to ask, and it makes it really enjoyable. So I appreciate it, and great job. Yeah.
Oh, bless you. I always like it when people big up the podcast host. Always is good for my ego. We will, of course, link to John's info in the show notes, which you can get for free along with the transcript at ecommercepodcast.net. Or if you're signed up to the newsletter, it will be winging its way direct to your inbox just automatically. And if you're not signed up to the newsletter, of course, sign up to the newsletter. What's wrong with you? So again, huge thanks to John for joining me today. Really, really great conversation. And a big shout out to today's show sponsor, the e-commerce cohort. Do head over to ecommercecohort.com for more information about this new type of e-commerce community that you can join. Be sure to follow the e-commerce podcast wherever you get your podcasts from, because we've got some great conversations lined up, and I don't want you to miss any of them. And in case no one has told you yet today, you are awesome. And that's just a burden you've got to bear. John has to bear it. I have to bear it. You've got to bear it too. Just awesome. The e-commerce podcast is produced by Orion Media. You can find our entire archive of episodes on your favorite podcast app. The team, the amazing, wonderful team that makes this show possible, is Sadaf Bainon, Josh Catchpole, Estella Robin, and Tim Johnson. Our theme song was written by Josh Edmondson and my good self. And as I mentioned, if you'd like to read the transcript and show notes, head over to the website ecommercepodcast.net or sign up to the newsletter. You know how to do it. It's on that website. That's it from me. That's it from John. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a fantastic week wherever you are in the world. Stay safe. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.